Welcome back to Globesweeper Hex Puzzler. Today we have two pretty short levels and not overly complicated, at least not for this stage of the game, I think. So honestly, I suspect both of these won't even take that long to do, but let's jump into 6 stripes to begin with, and then we'll do Dichotomy after that one. So, we have a line level. I prefer pressing the X button on the keyboard to mark all of the lines, but it's not really necessary in this one because this one is just individual puzzles. All of these are completely independent. There's no overlapping lines going across the globe or anything like that, but I still find it's nice to mark all of the lines, and then when we're done with a line, we'll just unmark it so we know. But again, that's preference for this this type of level. So, to start here, we can look at either one of these two lines. Let's start with this one, I suppose. We have 4 groups. That's all we know. And to make a group, we have to place a tile. Let's start by the end. That's the earliest point we can make a group. And then the earliest point we can make a second group would be to skip one tile and then add a tile here. And then to make a third group, we have to skip one tile, add another group. And to make a fourth group, we have to skip one tile and add the final tile. And that's all we have room for. Because we need 4 groups that are individual, we have to have a minimum of 7 tiles, and that's all we have. So we have to mark these 4 tiles, whoops, and disconnect the tiles in between. Then we get this 4 here marked. But now also we can just look at the bottom line. We have minimum 3 chains in 2 groups. So once again, we have 7 tiles. We have to have at least 1 3 chain. So we'll use 3 tiles for that. And then we have to have 2 groups, which means the second group also has to be at least 3 tiles. And since we need to have 1 gap between them, or else we would just have a 7 chain, we once again need to use all 7 tiles in this area. We have to have a 3 chain, and a gap, and another 3 chain. So we can just mark that right now, and disconnect this tile. But now, the tricky part about this little puzzle is this line. Max 4 in 3 groups. So, to think about this one, you just have to think, where can we place a 4 chain here? If we just start from the left here, if we add this tile, we get a 1, and then we add 1 more tile, then that's 2, but then the 3 is already done here, so this tile would be disconnected. We can't make a 4 chain here. If we start here, then that doesn't work. If we start here, then we have 1, 2, then this 3 is done and this is disconnected. Once again, we don't get a 4 chain. If we start here, this is disconnected, we don't get a 4 chain, and the last and final option is right here, 1, 2, 3, and 4. That's the only spot we can have a 4 chain in this line, so we have to do that. Alternatively, you can just, since we know this has to be the 4 chain, there's no other spot for a 4 chain, you can just count from this side. We have 1, maybe 1 tile, 2, 3, and then regardless, this one has to be marked, which now completes these 2, and then we confirm that that's the 4 chain. Either way, really, the 3 here is done, and that tile is marked. So that's the first little puzzle. Let's move downward here. In this line, we just have to mark 3 tiles, so there you go. In this line, we have 3 tiles total, and they have to be in 3 groups, which means they have to be 3 individual tiles with at least 1 gap between them. So, since we have a tile here, we can't mark any of the neighboring tiles. We get this tile for the 3, and all of these for the 4 here. Once again, we have a tile here, we can't connect the next one over, so disconnect that. And now we can just look at this line. In this line, we have a minimum 3 and a maximum 4. So all chains have to be 3 or 4 tiles in length. But we also have to have a 4 chain and a 3 chain. So we have a 4 chain, we can't go above that, so this tile has to be disconnected. And then we get the 5 here, and this 3. And then we have a minimum 3, so we have to make this into a 1, 2, and 3 chain. So now that's already done. And we have our 3 tiles in this line, so this one is disconnected. And here we have a max 2. We have a 2 chain here, so these tiles have to be disconnected. And this 3 is done, and this 4 marks this tile. Now let's move down here to the next one. Once again, we have one of these lines with 3 tiles, so there you go. In this line, we have a max 1 chain in 3 groups, so this tile can't connect up to any of the neighboring ones. It would be more than a 1 chain, so those are disconnected. Now I think the easiest way to think about this one, is this top line here. We need max 4 in 2 groups. So all you have to think about is the max 4. We have to have somewhere in here a 4 chain, and we have 7 tiles. So that means we have to use the center tile for the 4 chain. If we were to disconnect the center tile here, then we only have 3 tiles on this side and 3 tiles on this side, and there's no possibility to use to make a 4 chain. So because we can only make a 4 chain here, 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 or here, this tile has to be marked regardless. So then we complete the 3 here, and this 3, 0, this 3, and the 2 here. At this point, this line, minimum 2 in 2 groups. We already have 2 groups, and we have to make the minimum 2. So 1 and 2, 1 and 2. At this point, max 1 here. This tile can't be connected to one more, so disconnect this tile. But now it's the tricky part of this one, I feel. So here, I don't know if there's an easier way to see this, but the only way I found was just thinking, what happens if we mark this tile? Can we use none of the tiles here? If we were to mark this tile, the 4 would be complete, we would disconnect these 2 tiles, and then we would have to make a 4 chain, like so, but we only have 1 group, we can't add another group because we only have 1 final tile. So if we disconnect both of these tiles, we don't have space to make a 4 chain and 1 additional group. So this tile cannot be marked, we have to disconnect it. But I feel like there's probably an easier way to look at this line, so I guess if you find a better solution, then let me know. But we have a 2 chain, or a 2 tile here, so that's marked, completing the 4 here. And now we have to make this into our 4 chain, so 3 and 4, and the line is now done. And 2 here marks this tile. Then we move down to another one. Here we have 2 of these, 3 tiles here, 3 tiles here. So these are both done. Now here, in this line, we have a minimum 2 chain and 4 tiles total. So what would happen if we mark this center tile? We would get a chain of 3, which is fine for the minimum 2, but then we have to also have a minimum 2 chain, or we have to have a 2 chain for this minimum 2. And since we marked 3 tiles, we only have 1 tile remaining, so we can't make another 2 chain. Because of that, we have to disconnect this tile. And then we have to make this into a 2 chain, and this into a 2 chain, which now uses up all 4 tiles, and we can disconnect the remaining ones. This 3 needs these 2 tiles. And then here, we need a minimum 3 chain on both ends. We have a 3 chain here, but it could be more than that, we don't know. But here, this 2 needs one of these 2 tiles. If we were to use the top tile here, then the 2 has to disconnect this tile, and then the minimum 3 only has a single tile, and this one would be gone. So this top tile cannot be marked, or we would have to mark both of these. And then we get this for the 2, and the 1 here is done. Now, this has to be made into a 3 chain, so 2 and 3. This 3 is now done, so disconnect that tile. And then here, this is also a bit of a tricky thing. We have a 3 groups, 4 tiles clue. So we have to mark 4 tiles in this area in 3 separate groups. So far, we have 2 groups. Now, let's just work through all of the tiles. Where can we add a 3rd group? If we add this tile, it's connected to this tile, so that's not a new group. If we add this tile, it's connected to this one, that's not a new group. If we add this tile, it's also not a new group. So this tile is the only tile that's not connected to either of the pre-existing groups. So to add 3 groups, we have to mark this tile. And the 4 is now complete. And now, a little tricky thing again, well, not super tricky, but now we have 3 groups, so that's all well and good, but we have to add in our final tile. And if we add this top tile, then we connect up these 2 groups, and we're just left with 1 group here and 2 groups here. So that doesn't work. We can't use this tile, we have to use the bottom tile. So there we go. Now we're done with those, and we have 2 puzzles left. So this final one here, we start by looking at this line. Actually, it doesn't even really matter. We could look at... there's 2 different things. You can either look at this line or this one. I practiced just looking at this one. It doesn't really matter. But in this line, we have 2 tiles that have to be marked, but they have to be in 1 group. So we need 1 2 chain. And the 2 chain can be either here or here. So the center tile has to be marked regardless. We can't remove this tile, or we can't make it a 2 chain. So that is marked. Now here we have a minimum 5. So even if we start at the earliest point, we get 1, 2, and then we have to mark 3, 4, and 5. because if it starts at the earliest point, it'll end here, and if it doesn't start here, then it has to start here at the latest, and then continue on here. And here we have a max 1 line with a tile here, so we can't connect up either of these 2 tiles. So just remove those. We get 2 4s here that need all the tiles marked. And now we can just look at this minimum 5 again. We have 4 tiles here. We have to have a 5 chain somewhere in this line, and we can't have more than 1 5 chain. There's not enough tiles to have more than a 5 chain and another 5 chain or more. So because of that, this 4 chain will be completed here, or this 5 chain rather, and these 2 end tiles cannot be marked. Now after that, we look at this line, which has 4 tiles total and a maximum 3. So all chains have to be 3 or less, but we also have to have a 3 chain. And we can't have a 3 chain here, so we have to have a 3 chain in these 4 tiles. And since we already have a tile here, it can't not be connected to the 3 chain. If we start a 3 chain here, we get 1, 2, 3, and then 4. So the only possible spot for the 3 chain is in these 3 spots. So we can already mark that, which now completes the line, so these tiles are removed. This 1 is done here, this 1 needs this tile, and the 3 is done, and this 2 is done, this 1 is done, and this 1 is done. Alright, now the final puzzle here. We have 2 6s, so mark all of the tiles around them. Then now here, we need 3 groups. We have 1 group here and 1 group here, and these 2 tiles don't add another group. This tile in the middle is the only one that adds a 3rd group, so this has to be marked. And then we have to disconnect these 2 because we can't add... adding either of those 2 would remove a group again. So that's done, the 3 here is done, and the 4 marks this tile. This line is already done without us even doing anything. And now we can once again just think about this max 4. We need to have a 4 chain here, and similar to what we saw before, we have 7 tiles. To make a 4 chain, we have to use the center. We have to mark the center. If we remove it, we only have 3 tiles here and 3 tiles here, and we can't make a 4 chain. So this tile has to be marked, which now completes this 4, so this tile is disconnected, and we're left with only 1 possible spot for the 4 chain. So there we go. Pretty simple level overall, but it does have some tricky bits at the end of some of those mini puzzles, where it's not really a simple level, but it's a pretty short one. Now, another short level, Dichotomy. Let's jump into that. Alright, we once again have line clues, so I'm gonna press the X button on my keyboard to mark all of the lines. You can do that if you want to, but this one is just 4 separate puzzles, so they don't overlap in any way, so you don't really need to mark all the lines, but whatever, it's preference. Now, to start, we just have a 2 here, and a 2 here, so just mark those tiles. Now here we have a minimum 2 tile, so any tile here has to be part of a 2 chain or more. This tile has to be part of a 2 chain, so we have to mark this tile. This has to be part of a 2 chain, so we have to mark this tile. This max 1 tile has a tile here. We can't connect up this tile or it would make a 2 chain, which is too much for the 1, so this tile is disconnected. This minimum 2 has 1 tile here and has to be have at least a 2 chain, so 1 and 2, but now we can't connect up this 3rd tile, because if we do, we have a 3 chain, but we have to have a separate 2 chain for this minimum 2. And if we have a 3 chain here, there's not enough room to have a 2 chain, a separate additional 2 chain. So this has to be our 2 chain, and we have to disconnect this tile. And now, because we can't make this into a 2 chain, we have to disconnect this tile as well. This max 2 has 1 tile here and 1 tile here, but once again, we have to have a 2 chain for the tile, and this is our only spot for that. And then this max 1 is already done, so disconnect that, or it can't have a 2 chain. Now here, the second puzzle, we have these 2 3 lines. So here we have a minimum 3 line, but we have to have a 3 chain, which means we have to mark this center tile because we can only make a 3 chain this way, or this way. So center tile has to be marked regardless. And same here, we have a max 3, but once again, we have to have a 3 chain somewhere in here, so the center tile has to be marked, or we just have 2 tiles here and 2 tiles here. Now, this maximum 1 line has a tile here, and it can't be connected up to anything else in the line. This 3 needs these 2 tiles, and now this 2 is done here in the center. This 3 marks this tile. We have to have a 3 chain in this line, so this tile has to be marked. we have to have a 3 chain in this line, so these two have to be marked, and this tile can't be marked now because it can't be part of a minimum 3 chain. And we get the 1 here, so now these are already done, and we have a minimum 2 here with 1 tile here. We have to mark the second tile. Here, we have this maximum 1 with 1 tile here, so it can't connect up to the neighboring tile. That would make a 2 chain, so disconnect that. Once again, a max 1, so disconnect the tile. The 1 here, 0 there, 2 here, max 1 again. This tile can't connect to this one. This tile can't connect to or this max 1 can't connect this tile to this one. And here we have a minimum 2, so this tile has to be part of a 2 chain, so 1 and 2. But then we can't add the third tile because then we just make a 3 chain, and we have to have 1 2 chain for this minimum 2. So this tile has to be disconnected. The 1 is done here. Same thing again, minimum 2, 1 and 2 has to be the 2 chain, so disconnect this tile. This tile is marked now, but now this minimum 1 has a 3 chain, but we have to have a 1 chain as well. We have to have a single separate tile, and this tile is not separate, it would just be part of a 4 chain, so this is our only spot for one single separate one. So we have to mark this tile and preserve it as a 1 tile by disconnecting this tile. Now this max 1 has a tile here, we can't make it a 2 chain, so this tile is removed. But now, this minimum 1 has a 2 chain here and a single tile here. What would happen if we don't let this tile be the single tile that this minimum 1 needs? If we connect up this tile as well, then we get a 2 chain here, a 2 chain here, and just 1 tile that's connected to both of them. So we can't, in that case, mark any single separate tile for this minimum 1. So this tile has to be just the single tile, and we have to disconnect this tile. The 1 here is done, and the 2 marks this tile. And now, the final puzzle here. Here we have a minimum 3 in 5 tiles. Once again, we have to use the center tile. If we don't, then we get 2 tiles here and 2 tiles here. We can't make a 3 chain. So that's marked. And then here we have a maximum 1, so this tile can't be connected to these 2. And this 5 just needs all of these tiles marked. This line has a minimum 2, or maximum 2, sorry, so 2 line here can't be connected to this tile. And here, now this line has a minimum 2 tile, or a 2 line. We can't fit a 2 chain in here, since we only have 1 tile, so this is disconnected. And we have to have a 2 chain, so we have to mark these 2 tiles. First of all, we can look at this line. We have a max 2 and a minimum 2. So all tiles have to be in 2 chains here. So this 2 chain has to be disconnected here. But now we look at this minimum 3. We can't mark this final tile here because we have 2 tiles here. We have to have a 3 chain somewhere. So it could be a 3 chain here. It could be a 3 chain here. But if we mark this final tile, we have to make it part of a 3 chain. So we'd mark 1 and 2 and then 3. And we would get 4 and no room for a 3 chain. So this final tile can be disconnected. And then we mark this. We now have our 3 chain. We have to have 1 3 chain for this line. So this tile has to be disconnected. And this 2 is now done, so disconnect these 2 tiles. This 2 needs these 2. And finally, we need to have a minimum 2 chain here, so this tile is marked. So yeah, pretty simple level. That one, much simpler than the first one, 6 stripes I feel, but also just very easy for this stage of the game. But I'll leave it there for now. I'll practice up these remaining levels, I suppose. And yeah, I think some of them are very, very long, so we'll see how that goes. But thanks for watching, hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you again if you need help with more levels. Bye-bye!